final test of our seating, lighting, audio. Whew. Oh, it's cozy here. All right, I think this will do it. It's podcast day. It's podcast day. Hello, friends. Welcome to the heyBrownBerry Knitting Podcast. My name is Mars. I'm known as heyBrownBerry around the interwebs. I am most frequently found on Instagram and Ravelry, and you can find me as heyBrownBerry in both of those places. How are you? I am so happy to be sitting down in front of the camera. Got a comfy pillow underneath me. I am in our guest room, which doubles as my craft room when we don't have guests. So what you see behind me is a prettied up version of the place that I sit when I come in here to create. I'm happy you're here. I've told people before that I often get comments about my calm voice and my peaceful demeanor when they watch this podcast. I've received comments and compliments about that. Thank you. And as you can see, just sitting down here, I drop my shoulders, enjoy some deep breaths, and I do feel calmer once I start talking to the camera. I am not necessarily a calm person by nature, certainly not in all scenarios, but having you here brings me peaceful feelings. So thanks for being here. This episode is going to be a sharing episode. I had some things that I wanted to talk to you about, so I gathered them around me. If you watched my last episode, you know that I have a goal of setting up and preparing for podcasts within a 90-minute time frame, and that includes camera setup, getting things put nearby that I can reach for them so I can share them with you. And in this episode, I have multiple making related things to show, and I'm pretty excited about that. So let's dive right in. On the last episode, I showed you some of the John Arbon Textiles goodies I received in the mail as part of my mill membership. The John Arbon Mill is in Devon in the UK, and I signed up for the mill membership because I love what they're doing there for processing wool and making beautiful breeds available to those of us who are woolly fans worldwide. I also offered a giveaway, and I want to announce right off the bat the winner of the giveaway of the John Arbon Textile Annual. This gorgeous book full of patterns, activities, and great articles, as well as these goodies. So this is a set of minis that I naturally dyed several months ago. They're housed in a bag that was made by Serena of Wild in the Woods. Well, it's either made by her or provided by her. Hi, Serena. And there are 5 minis in here, dyed with different plants and natural materials from around my backyard. So I want to offer this to the winner of the giveaway, and it was a gratitude giveaway. All you had to do was be subscribed to this channel. That winner is Diana Woodson. Diana, if you're watching, hi, get in touch with me. You can reach me through Instagram or Ravelry as you choose. I'd love to get these in the mail to you, and I hope you'll enjoy them. Hopefully there are things in here that you'd like to share with us once you receive them. Since we're already on the yarny topic, let's start off with what I've knit recently. My latest finished object is a pair of socks. This pair of socks, as with most of my projects, has a story and some special meaning. I knit these using gifts from 3 different makers. So I'll let you have a look at them before I talk about them. And as I'm thinking about it, there are really 5 people involved in the making of these socks, aside from me. First, let's talk about the yarn. As you can see, this yarn features some gorgeous speckling and even a faint amount of striping. I'm going to give you a closer look. So these socks were knit with a couple different methods, but just to show you the general makeup, I've got a contrasting cuff and a nice deep purple yarn. The body of the sock is knit from an eco-printed sock blank, and most of the stripes and speckles you see are made from plants that were imprinted on that sock blank. The heel is actually some handspun that I received as a gift. And then the toe has the same contrasting yarn as the cuff. So as I said, many makers went into this pair. The contrasting cuff and toes were a purple mini that was sent to me by Lindsay of the Fiber Seed. Hey Lindsay! She gifted that to me. She's an amazing dyer, and I love the saturated color that she's able to achieve. It was a 20-gram mini, and I found through this pair of socks that 20 grams was enough to knit the length of cuff that I like, as well as both toes on this sock. And quite honestly, here's what was left. My scale wouldn't even measure this amount, so I assume it's less than 1 gram. That thrills me. I love not having leftovers. The body of the sock that I showed you up close is an eco-printed sock blank made by Maria. Mwah. Hello, darling. Maria is ninja.chickens on Instagram, and she also has a website at ninjachickens.org. The striping and speckles that I talked about, those are created by unraveling the sock blank. And if you haven't knit from a sock blank before, here's what it looks like at the start. You can see that in the blank format, the printing of the plants and leaves is really clear. It makes a beautiful picture just to look at while you're knitting. This sock blank was printed. First it was dyed with logwood, and then it was printed with maple, eucalyptus, butterfly pea flower. Maria is so proficient and so talented at combining plants and natural dyes. And because you use the sock blank by unraveling row by row of this machine knit panel, each time you reach one of the plants or leaves that's printed, or a different color spot created by the dye, you get a little piece of that color in the strand of yarn that you're knitting. I absolutely love the effect that creates. Very similar to a self-striping yarn or even a speckled yarn. The heel on these socks, as you'll see, featured beautifully variegated but mostly orange handspun yarn. The heel of the socks features a gorgeous variegated handspun. It's primarily orange, but on closer viewing you can see that it also contains some flecks of yellow and green. This handspun was gifted to me by Adrian, and he sent this to me in a completely surprise care package. Adrian is the Freakish Lemon on Instagram and here on YouTube, where he's got an amazing podcast that I think you'd really enjoy. This handspun was a small ball in a package of 12 gifts that Adrian sent me, essentially celebrating the coming of spring and making in general. There were so many things in there that I could use to make and create, and just other things for me to enjoy. And I was really excited to be able to add that to this sock project. So we've got Lindsay and Maria and Adrian. And then because Maria gifted me this sock blank as part of an Advent gift swap that she and Natalie of Remembrance's Pottery did with me last year, this is actually a twin. Natalie has this sock blank as well. So when she uses hers, we will have twinsy projects. And I absolutely love that. And yeah, I think that's everybody. Did I get everybody in this project? Yes, I believe so. It's so awesome to be able to make things and remember your friends through making them. Oh, no, I didn't remember everyone. The pattern that I used was primarily Mina's sock recipe. Mina is the knitting expat. She has an awesome podcast here on YouTube. Hi, Mina. And she's also the knitting expat on Instagram. She's a prolific pattern designer, and she's got a ton of sock patterns available on Ravelry. One of her sock patterns is a recipe for knitting vanilla socks that are primarily just stockinette in the round. But she's recently revised that to include what she calls the mini heel flap adjustment. If you go to my Ravelry page, you'll see that I've linked to Mina's pattern for that sock recipe. What I decided to do this time is, because Mina's pattern includes a multitude of options, I tried different parts of the pattern for each sock. What I mean by that is, on this sock, I knit the sock the way I typically knit, which is from the toe up. And Mina includes a heel flap adjustment set of instructions that allows you to get some more room across this portion of the sock. There are times when I knit a short row heel that I have a hard time with the fit across the top of my foot. And that's what this adjustment is able to mitigate, to help with. So I knit this sock toe up, I followed the instructions for making that adjustment, and then I continued up to the cuff. On the second sock, I decided to try Mina's instructions within that same pattern for knitting the sock cuff down. There is a heel flap adjustment for that direction as well, and you use a short row heel. I've done the German short row heel instead of the standard wrap and turn, and Mina gives instructions for that German short row heel as well. So out of the two socks, I was able to tell which gives me a better fit, and it actually turns out that the cuff down sock gave me more room in the heel. In fairness, I realized most of the way through that I was knitting the cuff down sock on a slightly larger needle. I knit this on a 2.25 millimeter, whereas most of the body of this sock was knit on a 2 millimeter. So that was a learning experience as well, because I actually like the fabric on the smaller needle for a sock blank in particular. The sock blank strands come out pretty wrinkly. And I've been asked before if that affects the gauge in the final product and in the knitting. My personal answer is, because of the way I tension my yarn when knitting, I tend to straighten out the strand before creating the stitches. So I don't notice as much ruffling or puckering in the finished product. And then, quite honestly, once I wet block it and soak the sock, you really can't tell. However, on the sock where I used the bigger needle and the gauge was looser, there was more room for those little squigglies to show up in the fabric. So I learned a lot from this one pair of socks. I'm definitely going to use Mina's recipe again in the future, especially for cuff down socks. And with sock blanks, I will more than likely use a 2.0 millimeter needle in order to achieve a really tight gauge. And if that means I need to make adjustments in, for example, a pattern or something like that, that's fine. I really enjoyed those, and I've already worn them actually. They're quite comfortable. Continuing with knitting news. I am returning now to some other projects that are on my needles because I was able to finish my largest project to date that was not a blanket, and that is the Seer cloak. The Seer cloak, or properly named the Seer, is a pattern by Maria of Ninja Chickens. I test knit this pattern for Maria because I'm a huge believer in her work as a designer. I am a fan and obviously a friend, but she had such a great set of ideas around the release of this pattern, as well as the other patterns within the collection for the Seer. And I struggled at first to make the deadline for test knitting because other things came up while I was knitting it, but I am so gratified to have finished it. So I'm going to share a video here of the Seer, and you'll be able to see the different parts of that project.
all the sea there to the toe. No severed ties, but wires tangled.
All the information about the yarn that I used and notes about knitting that pattern are available on my Ravelry. Be sure and check out Maria's design page on Ravelry or her website at ninjachickens.org. There are some really great complimentary things that go along with the Seer collection that I think you'd enjoy. There's tea, there's a beautifully hand-drawn photo that goes along with the theme, and there's a poem that Maria has chosen by Nikita Gill that perfectly illustrates the feeling and the concepts behind this collection. So I hope you enjoyed that and that you'll check out the Seer collection on Ravelry. Wrapping up the knitting section, I'm going to talk a little bit about a project that I have on the needles. This is my work in progress, and it is a sweater project, but it's not for me. It's actually for my daughter, Adachi. All right, so here is the start of my heritage sweater. As you can see, I've separated the body from the sleeves, and I am deciding right now whether or not I want to start some sleeve knitting and make progress there before I continue on the body. I'm knitting this for my oldest daughter, Adachi, and I was able to try it on her the other day, and so far so good. The fit is working out really well. I previously knit a breathing space sweater for Adachi, so I know that a raglan style sweater in a lighter weight yarn works really well for her. She's extremely knit worthy. The heritage sweater has some beautiful details. For example, the raglan shaping. It's done on a curve instead of the standard very straight diagonal. It almost gives the look of a traditional jersey type shirt, and that fit suits Adachi very well. It also has small styling details like a slip stitch, center stitch on the front and on the back. As you'll see, I've already changed colors. I'm knitting this in yarn by Hey Mama Wolf, by Eula of Hey Mama Wolf. It's her Sock Wool 04. This is the second color I'm using here. These are all naturally dyed yarns. And I'm doing some color blocking on the body, so large stripes essentially, and I'll do that same color blocking on the sleeves. I'm hoping that things will work out for the stripes to be proportional between body and sleeves, but Adachi is not too choosy, and I'm just enjoying the knit. As with everything that I talk about in terms of knitting projects, there are more details on my Ravelry page. I do my best to keep good notes there for myself and for you, so if you ever wanted to knit a similar project or take a look at what I found useful in a pattern, I try to put it out there for you, and I love getting questions and comments over there as well, so please feel free. What have you got on the needles? I'd love to hear in the comments what you're working on right now, if you're knitting or crocheting or spinning. Let's talk about spinning. I received this Ply magazine as a gift from my friend Bex. Ply magazine is a very well published product. It's called the Magazine for Hand Spinners, and it talks a lot about different wool breeds. It talks about the production of wool, and it includes patterns as well, which I think for any of us who spin is a great reminder that handspun also makes really great projects. I spindle spin, and I've already seen that you can accumulate a lot of fiber, spindles, and handspun, and those, the number of those tend to outweigh the number of finished projects. So seeing handspun made up into hats and scarves and sweaters is really inspiring. It's a good reminder to use our handspun. So as I was flipping through my ply magazine, I was thinking about the Spin and Make Along, which is being run by Grace of the Babbles Traveling Yarns podcast. Hi, Grace. Mwah. I'll tell you a little bit about where Grace and I will be spending some time together very shortly. And it's also being run by Mina of the Knitting Expat, who I mentioned earlier. The Spin and Make Along 2019, SMAL 2019, is an effort that these two wonderful makers and podcasters have put together to encourage us to use handspun. Perfect timing for any of us who have a stash full of fiber that's begging to be used. So I'm going to join in on that smell, and I have recently received this bag of goodies in the mail from my darling Jessica. Hi, Jessica. How are you? Within this bag, I have loads and loads of fluffy ounces of fiber amazingness. Very distracting. Why spin it when you can pet it? Jessica kindly sent me these fluff balls from the Spin Cycle Yarns mill where she works in the Pacific Northwest here in the US. Over in Bellingham, Washington, a few lady bosses run the company Spin Cycle Yarns, and this is essentially what's called mill waste, which is a funny term because it feels like treasure. And I intend to spin this treasure on my spindles and make some projects out of it. If you're interested in learning more about the Spin and Make Along, you can check the hashtag, and Grace has also posted about it, and so has Mina on their podcasts here on YouTube. I'll link in the show notes below how to find those two wonderful people, and also how to find Spin Cycle Yarns if you haven't heard of them before. Here's where I've reached so far on the spinning portion of my Spin and Make Along project. I'll give you a closer look. Here on my this is not a shocked spindle, I'm sorry, I'll put the spindle information below. But here on one of my smaller spindles, I've started to spin small nests of the mill waste fiber, and I've just been kind of mixing in colors that I think will go well together. My intention is to make a 2-ply yarn, and as you can see, I'm spinning now at what is kind of a moderate thickness for me, and because of practice, I'm getting better at getting the yarn, or at least the thickness in the singles that I prefer. So what I've done is I took the bag of mill waste and I separated out some of the colors I wanted to start with and started making little nests. So these are just little nests of fiber that I've separated out by color. All shades in the red family are appealing to me. So there were a good amount of burgundies, pinks, and lovely jewel tones in the bag. There were also some of these gorgeous grays and purples kind of mixed in. Spin Cycle Yarns are beautifully clever color creators. So I made little nests of different colors that I wanted to appear throughout the skein once it was done. And then I just each day unravel a few of these nests and spin them onto the spindle. And I'll continue doing that until I've got a good amount of single ply, and then I'll start that process again so that I can do the 2-ply. I'm really very fortunate to have this much fiber available. There will be a lot of playtime with the spindle and my little fiber nests. I also really enjoy the planning process, so thinking about what colors I want to include, and thinking also about when I ply the yarn, what color plies do I want to go together? So when you're spinning, you have so many options as to how the final yarn looks, and that's really, it can be intimidating at times, but it's also exciting. When I'm in the mindset of kind of a free-form creativity, I find it really exciting to think about when 2 plies, for example, are combined with each other, how will they look? I've thought about things like how the gray in some of these small nests might tone down the jewel tones in some of the others. And so it will be interesting to see how that looks. I'll keep you posted, and I hope that if spinning is something you're into, you'll join us in the Spin and Make Along. One of the other things I'm really enjoying lately is natural dyeing. I am still considering myself a natural dyeing rookie, a newbie, an enthusiastic beginner. I have the good fortune of friends who have either done natural dyeing as part of a business or a pretty sizable hobby, in the sense that it's something they've been doing for a good amount of time and have a lot of experience with. So I get great information through knowing them and following their journey. I also have taken books out of the library. Our local library happens to be an excellent one here in our county when it comes to craft-related books. And I've done a good amount of reading on plant dyeing especially. Most of the natural dyeing that I do is from food waste, things like avocado skins and pits, pomegranate skins, onion skins, and also from plants that occur naturally around me, primarily in my yard. We have things like loquat trees in our yard, avocado trees, hibiscus plants. I'm trying to think of all the plants that I've used so far. We've got oak trees, so I'm able to use acorns and oak galls. And even ferns and other things that give some color are right here surrounding me. There obviously is an industry in place for you to buy extracts of natural dyes. Many of them come in powder and liquid form. And so if you wanted to try natural dyeing that's a little less labor intensive in the sense of getting the dye colors you want, those things are readily available. I'm kind of enjoying the foraging and gathering portion of natural dyeing, and then the experimentation to see how different preparations of dye create different colors. So I get questions asked about it quite often, and my general response is most of what I've learned by asking, and I've learned by searching, so I encourage that. If you're doing any kind of dyeing at all, I think I want it to be a comfort to you that there's a lot of information out there. YouTube is a great resource as well. My most recent natural dyeing is kind of on display up here. I was able to create some different colors using yellow onion skins, some iron baths, acorn, and I just really enjoyed that process. One of the most recent and most exciting things I've tried is lichen. I live in South Florida. It is extremely humid here, and we have warm weather for several months of the year, sometimes up to 10 months of the year. We have fairly warm temperatures in the high 80s, even into the 90s Fahrenheit. And lichen grows profusely on logs, on rocks, on gates, on trees. And so having watched Marina Skewa's podcast, hi Marina, she was talking about some lichen dyeing that she had done, and I got really intrigued by that. And now, like everything that you discover, you realize that it's been everywhere all the time. So now I can't go anywhere near my yard or on a neighborhood walk without seeing lichen. I want to share with you a bit of the process of lichen dyeing that I've tried, and then I'll show you the yarn that came out of it. here is the yarn that I dyed with that Lichen dye stock. I'm actually going to take the label off so you can see more of the skein. And as I'm talking about it, I'll insert a short video of a close-up view of that skein. So I had not tried this before. It's my first time using Lichen as a dye stock. But from my reading, there are two principal ways that Lichen is processed in order to create color. One is to boil the Lichen. So you saw me scraping the Lichen off of the branches and putting it into a container. I then added water to that container and I just let it boil for about an hour and a half. I didn't have it on constant heat. I didn't want to evaporate off all the water, but I did about 30-minute stints of high to boiling water and then turned it down to let it simmer and then turned it back up again. I did that for up to about an hour and a half. And I could really see the color changing over the course of that heating process. Then I decided that instead of straining off the Lichen material, I just put the skein directly into the pot. And I'm really happy I did that. I haven't experimented, so I don't know if doing that created a richer color, but it feels to me like just having the yarn sit in with the dye material really helped with the saturation. Of course, it meant that when it was all said and done, there was quite a bit of Lichen debris on the skein, but that was fine. It was really easy actually to rinse it off. I find that with non-superwash yarns, these woollier yarns, which is what I like to use for dyeing and for knitting, once it's dry or mostly dry, you really can just shake the skein and a lot of the debris comes off. As well as when you're doing a soak to rinse the yarn, a lot of the debris tends to fall to the bottom of your soak container. And so it's pretty clean. And even if there are bits in there, some veg matter in there, I don't mind. It'll come off while I'm knitting most likely. So I'm really happy with the outcome of that Lichen dyeing. I almost forgot to mention the second way of extracting dye from Lichen is with ammonia. So you put ammonia in a jar and the Lichen, fresh or dried, and it stays there for months. I have a stick here to stir it around because it needs to be aerated every couple weeks or so. So I'm just storing it out here next to some mint seedlings I've planted. So if you use ammonia with the Lichen, you can get a range of colors. I've seen purple, I've seen an orangish red, so I'll be really interested to see what colors I get from this ammonia treatment. I'll report back in a few months. Speaking of dyeing, dyeing tends to be my go-to if I'm feeling a bit stressed or overwhelmed. I guess I'll segue this into what's on my mind. So what's on my mind is how to deal with feelings of overwhelm, anxiety, feeling low or even depressed. These are all things that I deal with on a regular basis. And I talk about them on Instagram at times, but what most people don't see is how I cope with them, what I do to deal with feeling that way. And I've kind of discovered by way of a messaging exchange on a post with Louise of the Knit British podcast that dyeing tends to be one of my go-to coping mechanisms, especially when I'm feeling overwhelmed. I dyed yarn as a business with my daughter for several months, about a year ago into early this year. And I really enjoyed it. And it's a very physical process, at least the way we do it. We were a very small operation. It involved a lot of manual labor, a lot of testing and retesting. And even just the process of wet wool, wet fiber, moving things around, getting them to dry is very physical. Because of the way we did it, we spent a lot of time outside, either dyeing yarns or preparing dye materials. So I realized that the process of dyeing is one that really helps me to address feelings of stress and anxiety. And it's because of those pieces. It's because it involves movement, use of my muscles, being outdoors. A lot of patience is required. And part of when I feel overwhelmed that gets to be a lot is when I start to feel impatient with everything. especially myself. I feel like nothing is happening as quickly as I'd like it to, or I'm not moving as quickly as I need to. And that impatience just translates into feelings of stress. Well, with dyeing, if you are after a certain result, patience is a must, whether it's simmering dye materials, waiting for yarn and fiber to dry, dipping and re-dipping a yarn because you want a different color or you want a combination. So a lot of patience required, and I find that I can bring that to the dye process. What I'm holding here is a fiber braid that I dyed, and this is from a new BIPOC, B-I-P-O-C, a Black Indigenous person of color who dyes yarn through Hopkins Fiber Studio. That's the label. I ordered this fiber some time back, and this is one of the 2 braids that came with it. I'll share the other one another time. This is fin fiber from the fin sheep, and it came in a natural color, a very light color that was essentially undyed. This is what my anxiety looks like on a high-stress work day with my day job. I jokingly say that my anxiety has different colors and different shades. So when I had a particularly rough day, I took some acid dyes and I decided to create a teal base on that undyed fiber and then go through and just simmer dye it with some different colors that I thought would blend together. And I actually don't mind opening it up so that you can see the range of colors that I tried in here. Now, I haven't done a lot of color theory. I haven't done a lot of, very precise representation of colors. I just took colors that I really enjoy and I applied them in different places. I had the fiber braid set out, it was unbraided, and I had the roving set out in a circle, and I'll insert a picture to make it clearer. And I set it out in a circle so that I could see, as I was applying different colors, I could see where I had some red, where I had some yellow, and then I tried to apply that in other kind of evenly spaced areas across the roving. And that worked out really well for giving me a good distribution of colors across the roving. So I'm really happy with that, primarily because of all the things I mentioned that were involved in dyeing it up, and it sincerely helped my mood that day. So I'm embracing that as a coping mechanism. I hope that if you have some mental health considerations in your life, that you also find something in your making that works really well for you. If nothing else, I find it to be a great distraction, a healthy distraction. And then I get the pleasure of knowing that I made it through that time period, and now I have something useful. One last item I would love to share with you comes from my sewing project box, and it is literally a project box. So this is a box that I'm reusing from one that was sent to me a while back, and it says 2019 sewing on it. And within the box, I've lined up projects in containers and bags, and in each one I've put a note to myself about what I would like to do for that sewing project. This one says, create a sweater-sized project bag with a zipper, interface, and use light quilt batting. Make it tall and wide with a simple lining, and patch pieces together if you have to. Notes to myself. Here's the fabric. Oop, a couple of pieces in here. I love this fabric. I love the colors. I love the drape. I know with some interfacing it will hold up really well. And with these 2 pieces, I'm positive that I can make the bag that I described. What's most satisfying about this is that It's from a thrifted skirt. I believe it was a skirt that no longer fit, and it had an elastic waistband that I cut out, and I salvaged these pieces in rectangles because I love the color so much. And I knew that it would be a really cheerful project bag and something that would be fun to sew. I don't know a lot about material just yet. I'm new to sewing, and I'm going to assume that this is some kind of cotton rayon blend. It might even have some polyester in it. I'm not sure. So in my effort to be more conscious about materials, this may not be something I would have chosen if I were buying fabric net new, but for my sewing projects this year, I'm not using a lot of net new purchased fabrics. I am trying to reuse clothes that the girls received as hand-me-downs, clothes that don't fit me anymore and are not to their taste, so they can't be reused, and clothes that, or fabrics that have colors that are compelling, so that I will stick to my goal of one sewing project a month. Do you have any year-long efforts going? Are you doing things like the Make 9 or setting aside a month for specific types of making? Share that with us. I would love to hear about it. So speaking of sharing, if you follow me on Instagram at heyBrownBerry, I recently posted about some of the make-alongs and knit-alongs that are happening in our Ravelry group. I highly encourage you to join us over there. Everyone is very welcoming and encouraging. And we have, I think, a really good spread of make-alongs that cover pretty much all of the crafts that most of you seem to be interested in. So if you sew or weave or knit or spin, there's something over there in the heyBrownBerry and Friends Ravelry group for you. I love that you were here with me at this time, friends. Whenever you're watching, know that it's really special to me that you chose to take some time out to share it with me. And I want to mention before I go that in June, I will be at the Woolliinn Dublin Festival. You may have seen on the Ravelry front page several days ago that I will be in the Ravelry Lounge with Jessica. Hi, Jessica. Co-founder of Ravelry, one of my favorite people. She and I will be in the Ravelry Lounge in Dublin at the Woolliinn Festival, and I'm really hoping that I'm going to get to meet some of you there. I'm going to be your virtual tour guide for that festival, and I'm very grateful to the folks at Woolliinn, at Ravelry, and at Cross and Woods. They're all sponsoring my efforts to be over there and record the humans of Ravelry. That means you guys. And to show you all what it's like at the festival and the folks who come to visit the Ravelry Lounge. So I'm really excited about that. That's going to be on the 14th of June. Over the course of that weekend, I'm going to snap pictures and take videos and record whatever I can so that I can share that experience with you. And I want to thank those sponsors because this is a huge opportunity and something I'm really looking forward to. And I get to room with Grace. And I know for a fact that's going to be fun. So look forward to that next month. And if you'll be there, shout out in the comments and let me know so that we can look out for each other. That's it for this time. Thank you so much for being here. Feel free to connect with me, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye. Sir, this is not wood. I promise you, you're not going to get any nourishment from this window. You just keep coming back, even though there's no upside. I'm trying to help you.